Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate, one of the guys I love the most in Colorado politics, former Governor Dick Lamm, who, my God, you are Colorado. I'm so glad that you spent some time with us. I appreciate it. Now, you've got this reputation, and you had it ever since I was a kid and starting to become politically aware, of being a maverick even inside your own party. I've kind of gotten the idea that not everyone in the Democratic Party was always happy with Dick Lamm, yeah, whether he was a state legislature or a governor or even after that. Is that a fair thing? I mean,
but I think I share that with you. I don't think that you could be particularly comfortable in either political party. Totally. I mean,
I've had lots of enemies in the Republican Party when they, I think, stray from free market principles.
Yeah. Sure, and I think both political parties are controlled by special interests, and it just drives me crazy to look at the influence of the trial lawyers and the teachers unions. The one people have heard me say this many times, but on the Democratic Party, it's outrageous.
But you were the governor. You were the Democratic governor. These were the forces to help you stay in office.
Well, what you do have to ask yourself. I don't know that I called upon them in particular, but you are right. They were an important part and still are of the Democratic coalition. I felt that the teachers union, when I was in the legislature, was a positive force. I think it's changed. It has really changed to something that is, maybe I was naive at the time, but back in the 60s, they were a positive force in terms of trying to get a certain education reform. Then it's changed. I mean, then it's become a real, just a typical union looking out for the teachers. But I do think that the idea that anybody like you and I could be perfectly comfortable in any political party is just against the laws of our nature.
I agree, but is there any other way around it? We have what gravitates to a two-party system. You have had your dalliances with third parties, and rich guys have gotten in your way on that one. But is there a better system? Is there something that works?
There certainly isn't outside a parliamentary system. And a parliamentary system, and that's got its own downsides. You look at Israel, and you see how a small political party can have the leverage to really keep everything. So I mean, but I think we have a winner-take-all system where it only makes sense to have two political parties, and reform is going to come within the political parties. The last third party that succeeded in America was the Republican Party in 1856, and they took a whole bunch of know-nothing and I can't even remember all of the parties back then. But
there's a know-nothing Republican joke right there, and I'm going to let it slide.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't mean to be critical, because they came up with Abraham Lincoln after John Fremont. I mean, it was a great. The Whigs, the Whigs Party is really what it was, and they formed a new political party, but it only was caused by the collapse of the existing political party, the Whigs.
The Republican Party at that point now. I mean, I look at the lockhold that Democrats have and the machinery here in Colorado, and I look at the failures of the Bush administration when it came to spending. Is the Republican Party now at that point where it needs to be reborn into something else?
Well, I think that I believe there's a perfect third political party out there, and that would be fiscally conservative and socially liberal. And everybody says that, and I think that the polls show that would be a very powerful political party. But you don't just start out a new political party.
But the Libertarian Party has been around forever, and they are the most dysfunctional party. It's interesting that Democrats were smart enough to take the Green Party after what happened to Al Gore and bring them in, say, we'll share your values and bring them in. The Republican Party has looked at the Libertarians and go just the opposite. We don't want any of that.
Isn't that interesting? I hadn't thought about it that way, but the famous political scientist Hofstadter said, the role of a third political party is to sting like a bee and then die. And that is true. One of the major parties will pick it up. I hadn't really thought through the Libertarian Party and the holding them at bay, I guess. And I think that's because of the Libertarians, their freedom feeling on some of the social issues.
Yeah, and Republicans will never let go on those social issues.
Yeah.
And some of them, now as the gay issue is coming to its final chapter, there's still people holding on that's not going to happen. Marijuana is now here, and there's still people holding on. And instead of saying, all right, let's bring it in, because I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I think the spirit of Colorado really hasn't changed since you started in the legislature in the late 60s. I think we're still a rather independently minded destination state for people who want to be left alone, who want to have their own lives and want a beautiful place in which to do it. I still feel, maybe I'm being naive again, that we're still the same Colorado as we were back when you were gov.
There's a famous Mo Ferrarino at Stanford. He compares the red states to the blue states, and he says that on even all of these controversial issues, there's not that much difference between red states and blue states. But when you look at the kind of delegates that people elect to the national conventions, there's a Grand Canyon of difference between the two of them. So in fact, it is the fact that the activists get involved in both parties and pull them either left or right.
But that's been the case forever, hasn't it?
Well, actually here recently what you're seeing is a bigger gap. You had quite a bit of overlap. When you go back to the, let's say, Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy time, you really were able to, both political parties would try to eat as much into the undecided and the independents as they could. And then, Karl Rove came along and said, I need 50% plus one. And that was his philosophy, consolidate the base and add just a few more. And it worked for him. And I think both parties are heading toward that, sort of that working model.
Actually, a little bit before this, I mean, there used to be a collegiality in politics. I mean,
John.
We would throw tomatoes at each other, and then we'd go out and have a beer afterwards. That seems gone.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know. I'm not up there on a day-to-day basis, but it sure does seem gone. I mean, I really had some of my best friends among the Republicans. My son, who was at that time 8 years old, let's say, he would go and sit with Mike Strang, a Republican, on his side of the aisle over there when you could have, right. And when they had as a voice vote, he would vote with Mike Strang. But there was, and there were people that would, come to my house for dinner, and this one I was just in the legislature. And there was a lot of camaraderie, and that has all seemed to be gone.
But that's also mirrored in D.C. politics as well.
Too,
I mean,
sure.
And
right.
Although I look back and people say, I've never seen it more divisive. And I said, wait a second, we had a civil war. We're not shooting each other yet.
Yeah, but that's right. But you look at that. David Brinkley wrote a really wonderful book about Washington, D.C., and he said, transportation is the problem. When we now have people be able to get back to their districts almost wherever you live in the United States. It used to be they were caught in Washington, right. And it was, John, come over to dinner some night, or I'm going to see you at our kids' Little League ball team. There was a lot of being there and in the same proximity. Now they come back on Tuesday morning or Monday night, and they leave on Thursday, and it's just terrible. There's no sort of relationships that are developed in the Congress.
Let's talk about Colorado, the land we both love. You became a politically viable candidate for governor when you led what seemed to be an insurmountable campaign to get rid of the Olympics. I remember this as a kid, and I remember even as a kid, I'm thinking, I don't want the Olympics here. I don't want anybody else to be coming here and ruining the state and then walking away. But that was a real defining moment for you as a politician.
It sure was.
And now what is it, 40 years later, is that right? 30 years later, we're having the same argument that we did back then. Everything old is new again. Has anything substantially changed? Do you feel the same way about the Olympics?
I don't want to rain on any more than I've already rained upon. I think that my argument was more or less to do with 1972. If the Olympic Committee comes up with a proposal, I just don't want to prejudge it at this point. Right. But I am very skeptical that we can make the Olympics work here.
Why? What was the argument back then?
Well, two arguments, but what cost was one, and I think that one was, in other words, all of the media revenues from the 1976 Olympics was going to amount to $5 million. I mean, it was just, the whole thing has changed. First of all, the economics. of the Olympics have somewhat changed, and so you at least have the possibility of running an Olympics that balances, the balance sheet works. But the second one would be the environment and the idea that, you know, Colorado is not is well known to have a particular affinity to the environment. But you know just let me say a brag. You know, Baron von Bismarck said, "Success is the child of audacity." And the Olympics, you know, I thought I was committing political suicide. I believed what I was doing, but I thought I was committing political suicide. And it turns out the same people who defeated the Olympics 2 years later elected me governor. Who would have thunk it?
When you look back on that, I mean, you've got such a great place in Colorado history, and you're you know, to have a 12-year term as governor, you look back. When you look back on it, what's the main feeling you have? What is it that you look back and go, "Damn, that was great," or "God, I would never do that again"? What was the best part of it all?
Well, two answers. I mean, number one, it was just such. It was like drinking out of a fire hydrant. You know, I mean, life came at you so fast. And so what I really think is, you know, when you just dividing your time into 15-minute segments, right, and trying to put so much in a 24-hour day. I think the thing I'm proudest of is the people I brought into government. I really, I think the one talent that I had is I could pick good people to surround myself with. They made me look good.
Say the same thing about all your judge appointments?
No. Well, you know, I don't say that even about all my cabinet appointments, but I think generally on the cabinet, I did people who made Colorado work efficiently and well, as much as anybody can.
If you could go back and change one thing, if you could say, I'm going to change my mind on this decision, now given so many years, what would you have done differently?
Oh,
just choose.
Well, it sounds de minimis, but I think that one of the things, every time I see a motorcycle death, I think about how the fact that I signed the repeal of the motorcycle helmet law, which is
you would change that. See, again, maybe this is a difference in our philosophies.
Yeah.
But I see there's a liberty.
There's a liberty.
There's somebody who wants to ruin his life. I can't imagine it. I wouldn't do it myself. But I want to protect his right to live his life, even if that leads to his death.
Yeah, I want to protect him.
Hey, you did a column just recently in the Denver Post. You admitted to being a Keynesian. Now this is, you know, for me, you can come out of the closet and say you're homosexual, that's fine, but you can never say you're a Keynesian.
Everybody says they're Keynesian.
I've never said I'm a Keynesian. Even
not you, but I said, but Richard Nixon and Milton Friedman.
But he only said it as we're all Keynesians and that this is what we're doing, not that he agreed
I understand
with it.
That, but you know, I don't. Whether or not it's the basic flaw of Keynes might still be right. But the fact is, I don't think a democracy has the self-discipline to pay back during good times what it borrows in bad times. So I think the basic structure of Keynesian economics is flawed because we don't have the civic will to be able to pay back, and we just continue to run the debt up and up and up. And I think we have an immense debt bubble that is going to cause us great harm as a country.
But you said that you were Keynesian, and you believe that government debt stimulating an economy is a valid thing to do during an economic slowdown. Has Keynesian economics ever worked in the long run where it gets paid back?
Well, the argument, no. Well, I guess it did. The Second World War got paid back. I mean, you know, the argument is that it wasn't the New Deal; it was the Second World War that got us out of the Depression. There's a very powerful argument along that line. But I got out of high school in 1953. By that time, most of the Second World War debt had been paid down. So we had paid down the war debt. But we set up a precedent in the 30s where we started borrowing money. And in the last 77 years, we've only balanced the budget 8 times. It's just incredible how much we become hooked on debt.
But it feels so good.
Yeah.
You know, and I've got buddies who have had their own personal bankruptcy, and we all know people who have relied too much on their credit cards. It becomes this abstraction, and I don't see a pleasant way out of this mess.
I don't either.
I mean,
No, I don't either. This is not going to end well, John. It's not going to end well because, you know, debt, debt either has to be paid off. And when you look at the size of the debt, first of all, most Americans don't understand.
Give us an idea. How big is this?
Well, David Walker, the former Controller General, says that it's $100 trillion. We say it's $16.8 trillion. That's the published figure. But we don't accrue our liability. So none of the future Medicare, Social Security, all that is off the books. And so when you really look at what kind of promises have we made in our children's name, it's $100 trillion. And there's some people that say it's close to $200 trillion. So it's far beyond the ability of our society to pay off. So we're either going to have to inflate, ever pay off. I mean, we could double the taxes of everybody. It wouldn't be, you know.
But I don't see how this gets solved without massive inflation at some point. That is, if we can keep spending where it is, which is a tough thing to do, and then have the hyperinflation to make it go away. I don't see that happening. And dangerous things happen.
They do.
When economies collapse.
They sure do.
You know, when you're taking barrels full of cash to buy your groceries, as it was in pre-war Germany, bad things happen and bad people come to power.
I think that's really an important point, John. I think that if America's got to wake up to the fact that that's what we're running a risk of, you know, that economic crisis is Russian roulette. You could get a Hitler, you get a Mussolini, you get a Roosevelt. We're lucky to get a Roosevelt. Whatever you think of Roosevelt is a hell of a lot better than Hitler and Mussolini. But economic crises bring the kind of things that you say. They bring extreme leaders. And we're going to have an economic crisis. It's locked in. We've built it in.
Let me challenge you on that. You know, because I hear people say, no, we'll be able to grow our way out of this. We hear, no, we just need a little bit more priming of the pump. You've got, you know, Klugman saying, no, we're not Keynesian enough. When you say we're locked in, you're living up to your moniker that given to you by the media of Governor Gloom. Are we locked in? I mean, is there no way out of this? I mean, trust me, I don't see it, so I'm not going to disagree with you. For me, it's a question of when.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, it's a question of when, too. I mean, I just don't, could you foresee, for instance, really radically reforming Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those are the big drivers, and reducing the defense budget? I mean, if you really did all of those three things, then all of a sudden you reduce the amount of unfunded liabilities, and that $100 trillion figure becomes maybe more manageable when an economy could pay it off. So I don't see how we can politically do what we need to do economically to leave a decent economy for our kids. Call me gloomy, but I just don't see it. You know, maybe I'm missing it. I well could miss it. I've been wrong other times, but I think I'm right on this one.
So you're just investing in gold and in a bomb shelter up in Wyoming?
You know, so investing in gold is going to drop down. Yeah, no, I know. I have to go along with, I have an investment advisor, and TIAA-CREF is where my money is, and I'm just going along with I don't see the guns and gold argument. I can't do it anyway. But
come over, we'll show you. We've got a lot of beer too. Let me ask you about the morality of debt, and I see it as an intergenerational financial rape. I mean, I see it as fiscal child abuse. It is something lacking in morality. The other argument is, wait a second. Was it immoral that we built up these bonds to build a highway system that now is connecting our cities and allowing manufacturing and merchandise to be shipped? No, it isn't. But we actually got something for that, and we paid it off. It had a payoff date. I mean, you talk about the federal debt. Here in Colorado, the immediate debt is about $10,000 for every man, woman, and child when you add up all the local debt. And there are still unfunded mandates here. We've got a retirement system that's completely upside down for public employees. That's going to cost us a lot of money. You know, is it a moral issue? And if it is, what about the argument that no, we're building for the future? It's not wrong to build a school to educate the kids, and then they're going to pay for it later.
I think let's stick with that original issue. Is it a moral issue? And I claim that there is a ethics are not necessarily formed into stone. There can be new ethical issues that arise. And so, you know, my generation spent a lot of time talking about the haves versus the have-nots. But I think there's this new issue that you talk about, and that's justice over time. And that's the fact where my generation has incredibly screwed the young people. And we have, in fact, made promises on their behalf that they're going to have to pay off. And it is a moral issue. You're damn right it's a moral issue, because we've encumbered them and we've pre-spent a lot of their own money.
If it's going to happen, I don't know what it is it a, this is the, would you rather have a cyanide capsule or a noose? Is it better to rush our way into some sort of financial bankruptcy so that we can get out of it faster? Yeah. Or is it better to do what we're doing, which is kicking the can down the road, and every legislature, every Congress says they're going to do something, but sooner or later grease happens? What's best for my kids? I've got two very young kids.
I can understand why a politician wouldn't want to do this or say this, but I think it's best the sooner we have the crisis, the less the magnitude of the crisis. This is what David Stockman is saying here recently, and he's saying, you know, this isn't going to get better. All we do is build a bigger bubble. And I think this applies to the whole international. I went through the other day on my computer to try to figure out how much does the developed world owe. So the total gross world product is about $67 trillion, $67 trillion. I think I can show you the world owes at least $300 trillion against that $67 trillion. Well, again, it's not going to end well. So it's not only the United States. And you know, nobody wants to bring on a crisis in the country, but it's not going to get any better. It's only going to make a bigger bubble.
How do you bring on the crisis? Because we're reaching a point where half of the people don't pay income tax. You know, we all pay sales tax and other things, but the amount of people receiving from government compared to those putting in is going down. I mean, at some point when you have more takers voting than givers, then it falls apart.
Well, I think that I challenge some of those numbers. I mean, yesterday was tax day, and you know, 79% of Americans pay more taxes in payroll taxes than they do in income taxes. So you're talking about income taxes, but
still, income tax by far is the largest contributor to the national treasury.
Well, 40% of the treasury is payroll taxes. 15.3% that we take out from the day one that you start working. And you can't take charitable deductions against that. That is, I mean, you can't take your mortgage expenses against that. That's 15.3 that comes right out up to $113,700, and that's a hell of a tax collector. Withholding taxes is a hell of a tax collector. But I think that you know, it's that I just don't buy the fact that that most people pay some sort of taxes. Now, whether you have created dependency, to me, is a much more interesting issue.
Have we created dependency?
Of course we've created dependency. And the biggest welfare queens are my age and my generation. It's the elderly that are taken. You know, I have gotten back all the money I paid into Social Security and then some, and I'm still taking money. Essentially, I am on welfare. The federal government is paying me money that I didn't earn. Well, now some people say, well, I earned it because I paid into Social Security and I go, no, I deserve it, and everything else. You know, I mean,
well, you know, I'll give Bush kudos for this. He brought up the idea of privatizing retirement accounts. I don't know how we save the country until we have something like that. I don't see how we save public pensions until we do what Alaska and other states have done, which is to turn defined benefits into defined contributions, and people have something that's actually theirs. Yeah. The idea that Argentina is ahead of us in this is scary.
My wife and I were on a bicycle trip in Chile, and I traced down the guy that started the Chilean, you know, system, which you're just one of the things. Argentina, a lot of South American countries have done this, and a lot of places now, even England, has started a slow transition away from one form into another. Bill Clinton said, "What if we could save 1% of our Social Security taxes, you know, in a private system, and then try to make a transition?" It's very difficult to do because some generation has to pay twice. you have to fund your own retirement, plus you have to pay for that of your parents, and that's very difficult to do. In a way, our options are foreclosed. I think on Social Security, we can raise the minimum age so you can get Social Security. It shouldn't be 62. It should be at least 64. Raise the other retirement age till 70. Do a few other things, and you can save Social Security. It's Medicare that's really the haunting one.
How do you fix Medicaid?
I don't know. You make America realize that you can't pay for everything for everybody that medical science has invented, i.e. rationing.
But don't we already have rationing with the marketplace?
Absolutely we do. I think America denies more health care to more people than any other developed country in the world. We have rationing.
I don't know people who are denied care. I've gone up to Canada. I've seen people who are denied care. People who have chronic problems that could be solved, but they're being denied. I don't see that many people being denied that care here.
I think that's wrong. I think that America, the studies show that America is 19th out of 19 countries in terms of being able to save people that have illnesses that can be dealt with by medical, because leave 50 million people, out of the insurance system. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have access to something.
Insurance and treatment are two very different things.
I grant you that
Go
problem.
to Canada, everybody's got insurance. Yeah. Not everybody has treatment.
And they're healthier than we are, John. They got a very good system in Canada. They have a wonderful system.
Just because they have better beer than we have here. That's what, hey, we've only got a minute left here. Tell me, when you're looking back, who are your political idols? Who do you look back on throughout history, or even Colorado history, and go, that's a person that had it right. That's a hero of mine.
I just got done reading the 3rd volume of Winston Churchill, the Mansfield's book on Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill's got to be one of the all-timers. Teddy Roosevelt's got to be an all-timer. Lincoln is a predictable one. I was very influenced at the time by John F. Kennedy. I got into politics because of influence of John F. Kennedy. It was a shock of electricity to my generation. We were going to have a war. We were going to save the world. And through Lyndon Johnson, we're going to have a war on poverty. You just didn't notice how successful we were.
I didn't notice. You'll have to tell me afterwards. Governor, thank you. I love doing this. Can we do it again soon?
We'll do it again.
All right.
Thanks,
Dick Lamm, thank you. Hey, thank you. Check us out at the Independence Institute. That's independenceinstitute.org. Listen on KHAL Radio. Tell a friend, and we'll see you next week.